I'm Joe Seitz and welcome back to my blog. I want to tell you the story today that happened to me in 1976. 1976 was a year that was just really important to me in my fiddling involvement, and that was the year that I went down to Texas. I spent some time down there with Dick Barrett, and I met some great fiddle players. I met Norman Solomon and Major Franklin and Louis Franklin. Ace Sewell was down there. It was the first time I met Shorty, Texas Shorty, or Jim Chancellor, and his brother Robert. Met Bobby Chrisman. It was just an incredible year for me. I also met Rex Galentine and some of the other great fiddle players that lived down in Texas in that period. But today I'd like to tell you the story about when Dick Barrett took me over to Major Franklin's house and introduced me to him. And it seems that Major didn't see him. It's true. Major was very upset at the fiddling community over the loss of his great guitar player, Omega Burden, who it kind of soured him on fiddle music and the whole 9 yards when it come to fiddling after he lost Omega, who happened to be a great pioneer and an incredible rhythm guitar player for Texas-style breakdown fiddling. So anyway, he had kind of snubbed the fiddle players for quite a few years and didn't really associate with them. And Dick warned me about this, that he wasn't too friendly to fiddle players. And he also told me, he said that Major really liked squirrels, so Dick thought it'd be a great idea if we went out squirrel hunting, and kind of a peace offering that we would take over to Major so he could, introduce me to him and I could get to at least meet him and visit with him a little bit. So that's what we did. We went and we got a bunch of squirrels, and that's another story in itself. I'll tell you about the day that me and Dick Barrett went squirrel hunting. Their hunting methods in Texas are different than they are up here in Idaho, but the end results are still the same. But anyway, we went over to Major's house, and he told me, Dick says, you sit in the car here, and he says, I'll go up on the steps and I'll knock and you watch, and if it's okay for you to come up there, I'll put my hand behind my back and I'll wave you to come up there, but if not, just sit in the car. So anyway, we got there, and pretty quick I looked up there and his hand was going, he was waving at me to come up there, and he was talking to Major, and when I walked up on the steps, Dick says to Major, he says, Major, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine from Idaho. His name is Joe Seitz, and it's kind of funny because, Major had an eye that was a little sleepy, I guess they call it, and you really couldn't tell for sure if he's looking right at you or above you or just for sure, but he didn't say anything to me. He didn't say, pleased to meet you, or what, he just kind of stared at me. And so anyway, he invited us in the house, and Major was not a tall fella. He was kind of short, but he was kind of round and kind of gruff a little bit, but I've never seen Dick Barrett so humble around somebody in my life as he was around Major Franklin. But Dick was talking to Major, and Major just kind of sat in the chair, his easy chair, rocking back and forth, and he just kept staring at me. It made me feel really uncomfortable. And then right in the middle of one of Dick's sentences, he just flat interrupted me, looked at me, and he says, you play the fiddle, don't you, boy? And I told him, I said, yes, I do. And I kind of hung my head in shame like I'd been found out, and he said, oh, I knew you did. And that was my first meeting of Major, and several days after that, I actually got an opportunity to hear him play at a fiddle contest in Durant. He didn't compete, but he was there under duress, and that's another story that I can't wait to share with you about when his two boys brought him to Durant, Oklahoma to the fiddle contest, and he was not a happy camper to be there, and he didn't know that's where he was headed, but that was the day I met Major Franklin.